Story many are familiar with: the RMS Titanic sailing across the Atlantic Ocean, struck by an iceberg, sunk to the bottom of the Atlantic. There are some who think the story is different. Robin Gardner is one of these people. He has the theory that the ship was sunk intentionally. Gardner's theory goes that this man, J.P. Morgan, and his company sunk the Titanic for the insurance money that they would get out of it. Theory goes that the Titanic sister ship, Olympic, is the ship that is swapped with the Titanic on its maiden voyage after it was struck in port and severely damaged. Gardner goes on to try to prove his theory by stating that he sunk the ship intentionally so that he could profit off of the insurance money and write it off completely, write off the Titanic completely, and it would have paid for both the repairs of the Olympic and the damage done to the Titanic. There's just one slight issue with that theory. The money that they got back from the insurance company didn't even cover the damage that was done to the Titanic, let alone the funds that they had to pay to the families of all of the victims involved in the tragic accident. When using Pipe's tools to help disprove this theory, one example is people who follow this theory, like the conspiracy theorists who follow this theory, they always dismiss evidence that helps support that it was the Titanic that sunk. Like, when they've gone down and people have viewed the wreckage, they've found the numbers, like the identification numbers for the Titanic, on that wreckage, stamped into the propellers and stamped into the sheet metal. And that's only unique to the Titanic. The Olympic wouldn't have those numbers. The Olympic would have had its own set numbers, right? Another fact that believers of this theory like to point out is the fact that J.P. Morgan decided to not go on the ship's maiden voyage, and that at the last hour he had 7 bronze statues pulled off of the ship. That last point just shows how Gardner and any other believers of this theory, they're indiscriminately accepting any argument that points to conspiracy. Why did J.P. Morgan step off of the ship, not go on its maiden voyage? He must have planned the sinking. Another theory that goes along with the planned sinking is that J.P. Morgan did it to murder 3 very rich rivals that he had that were on board the ship. This theory goes that Morgan staged the sinking of the Titanic to murder 3 of his rivals who were aboard the ship when it sunk. These rivals being Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, and Benjamin Guggenheim, who all perished when the ship sunk. This is all based on the fact that Morgan wanted to kill them because they supposedly opposed the creation of the Federal Reserve in America. However, Astor and Guggenheim, they never publicly took a stance on that matter, and Strauss actually supported it. This part of the theory, looking at it with like a political science almost view of it, Morgan gained nothing from these 3 dying on the Titanic. He had no direct guarantee that they would have gone down with the ship. And really, when 2 of them didn't oppose the Federal Reserve, and one of them actively supported it, those seem more like people that he would have wanted to keep around, because he would have had one helping him back the Federal Reserve, and then 2 who aren't opposing it. And then, when you look at both of these theories, they all hinge around J.P. Morgan wanting to sink the ship for some nefarious purpose, either to have profited off of the insurance money or to eliminate 3 rivals that he had. And it's easy to look at that and see that that conspiracist theories who follow this line of thinking, they're looking at it and they're looking for a symbol, and they can easily associate J.P. Morgan with that big bad, corrupt businessman who will do anything that he can to get his next $1 million or make as much money as they can, having no cares for who he has to hurt to get along in the way. But when you look at the facts, it's not true. It doesn't add up. You look at how this theory has shown up and manifested in popular culture. It hasn't really. Besides Robin Gardner's book that he wrote surrounding this whole theory, it hasn't really popped up in products, branding, merchandise, shows. Because even when you think about shows or movies, Titanic, record-breaking movie that it was, is all about the Titanic, not it not being the Titanic. In conclusion, wrapping this up, I've gone on to prove how this theory is wrong. It's just not feasible that the ships were switched. It made no sense for it to happen. And to each their own, people can continue to believe this theory if they wish to, but the facts are pointing to it being false.